Hey, everybody. This is Becky with The Messy Truth, and I have Jen next to me that way. And we have a special guest, Alicia, is below me tonight. And Maureen's not with us tonight. She's got stuff going on. And so, maybe that works out for the best, that it's just a quiet, intimate conversation. But this is going to be different than any of the other episodes that we've done. October, as we shared in our last podcast, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so as you heard, if you listened to it, the police chief of New Paltz called it the hidden crime. And so we have the opportunity tonight to invite a friend from high school and a dear woman to share her story and not have it be hidden anymore. And so we're excited about that. And Alicia was, and in some ways still is, a victim of domestic violence, and she's going to share her story tonight. And so first, Alicia, we thank you for being willing and being brave to do that. And as you told us before we even started recording, that this is the first time you've ever shared it. So thank you for trusting us with your story. And we really appreciate you being willing to do that. So we thought we would just have questions to kind of make it easy, because these are hard topics and hard memories to go through. And so the first question we wanted to get you rolling on, or just talking about, was in your relationship with the person who was abusive to you, what were the first signs of abuse that you noticed?
Thank you for having me. Yes. It was subtle. In the beginning, the first stage is just the person gets angry at little things. And then, initially you don't want to believe that this person is abusive. So when they are angry at small things, you start thinking, what can I do? What did I do wrong? So the first stage was that, angry at the smallest things. And I would end up turning around and saying, okay, I'm sorry. I was apologetic. I didn't realize that upset you or that bothered you, and it became a little bit, and I, of course, wanted to make everything okay. So that was the first sign, and then it moved on to the second stage, where the person was more demanding, and far more argumentative, and it became a blaming thing. And you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what, so it's a little breakdown of kind of destroying yourself, destroying the person that you are, and doubting yourself within the relationship. And it happens early on. It's very subtle, and so yes, I had flags very early, and people always say that believe who the person says they are. And I didn't want to believe the person that he said he was. I leaned more on his story, because they always tell you their story and why they blow up or get angry, and, as in a new relationship, I wanted it to work out. So I wanted to be the person to help him get better.
Yeah. Was this, this was a person you eventually married, right?
Correct.
Did the signs happen before marriage or only after?
No, it started almost immediately, and I fed into it. I tried to make him better. I was with the person for 13 years, and almost immediately he told me, I come from a broken family where I saw domestic violence in my home, where I saw my father beating my mother. I saw my mother beating my father. It was toxic. There was alcoholism, you know. There was abandonment issues. Mom left the home and he was raised by dad, and his siblings were raised by dad. So this person had a way of having me feel empathy for his story, and I wanted to make it better.
Mhm.
That's usually what happens. And um, so, yes, so early on, I saw the red flags, but I thought that I could make it better by showing him what family meant, what, you know, just what unity meant,
Mhm.
that's what he lacked. Um, but very, very early on, I did see the signs.
Hmm.
I just chose to believe that it could get better.
Right. One of the things you just said about your family, and a couple minutes before you gave that information, I actually wrote this down because it came to my mind was, do you think that there was anything in your upbringing or your family life that may have kind of led you, like given you a propensity towards getting involved with a person like this without, like subconsciously, really without kind of choosing it, but maybe just your background might have naturally led you to that? And given the fact that you said that there was domestic violence in your family and alcoholism, I think that probably
Well,
did, but I'm just curious what you think about that.
it was in his family, and in our family. I mean, my parents came from Honduras. They came from another country into this country and had to start from scratch. My family was a very close knit family, um, but very traditional. My mother raised us to cater to our husbands, you know, um, to shy down and stay quiet to certain things. So when I married my ex-husband, I felt like his problems, I had to stay quiet. I had to make face for family, and I had to support him,
Mhm.
you know, whether it was wrong or right. And I could not tell anybody what was going on in our home, whether I was hurting, or anything, because that's the way I was raised, traditionally. And that's the way my home was.
Okay. So when you were saying that the mother hit the dad and the dad hit the mom, was that his family or your family? Okay, his family. Okay. All right. Because I didn't want people out there to think it was your family if it wasn't your family. Okay.
It was my family. My family had struggles with learning the language, coming to this country, not knowing the language. So at a very young age, I was translating for my parents and translating, so those were the struggles. We had you know, economic struggles and things like that, but there was no domestic violence in my home.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. I mean, Jen, I don't want to be throwing out all the questions, and you have questions too. So I don't want to be a hog.
So it just came to mind. When did you decide to tell someone, and who did you, if you can tell us, who did you tell, and did that person believe you?
Jen, it was very difficult. I kept it a secret for almost 13 years. And I kept it a secret because, and I kept telling myself, I know who I married. I walked down that aisle. I knew who I was marrying, because way before I married him, there was red flags, and I knew it. But the person that I was dealing with was a narcissist, and he was very good at like making things, having things horrible, and then working his way back to pulling me back into this toxic relationship, and to saying, oh, I didn't mean it, I apologize. And it was very toxic. At the time, I didn't know, I didn't know better at the time. At the time, I still tried to believe in him. I still thought that he could do better. I don't know if you girls know about narcissists, but he was very charming. He would abuse and then turn around and blame me. And then I would think, maybe I did do something wrong. Maybe I did do this. Maybe I should change this area or this part of me, not knowing that he was breaking every part of me. I wasn't even the shell of the woman that I was when I first met him, and it took 13 years. I did not tell anybody because prior to me marrying this person, people, family members, friends warned me, said, Alicia, he's this, he's that, he's done X, Y, and Z. And I would confront him. Did you do this, that, and the third? Yes, but I'm a changed man.
That was my next question. That was my next question was, did anyone else, red flags, did people try to warn you?
Everyone I used to, at that time, I lived in Newburgh. Everyone in the community would come to my family members, my parents, my mother, and say, he's done X, Y, and Z. This is his history. This is his reputation. This is what he's done. And I would confront him and say, did you do X, Y, and Z? Did you do this, that, and the third? And he would say, yes, I did, but I'm a changed man. I adore you. I love you. I'm going to change my life because of you, and, at that time, I was a single mom of a baby girl, so I have to take some responsibility that I was vulnerable. My self-esteem may not have been where it should have been. And I thought this was the best I was going to get, and I dove into the relationship. I believed everything that he said, that he's a changed man, that he did those things, but he's new now, and I dove into the relationship, and almost immediately I did see red flags. But when you're dealing with a person that's a narcissist, it's very difficult. It's very toxic. It's almost like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Just pulls you in, pulls you out, has you believing that they can change, and when I first met this person, I was the most career-driven woman you could have met. even with a child, a small child, a baby. I had a good position. I worked in the mental health field, and I was career driven. You know, whatever agency that I worked at, if I started as let's say a staff member, I knew that within 6 months I was going to be director. That was me. You know, I was very career driven. By the end of this relationship, I was not working. And I wasn't even the shell of the woman that I was before I met this person.
Mhm. Hmm. My mind is swirling right now with questions. I'm not even sure where to begin. On a couple of days ago, when we did the recording with Rob Lucchese, we talked about the 4 main types of domestic violence, you know, physical violence, sexual violence, emotional, and economic.
Yes.
Which of those, if you feel comfortable sharing, apply to you in your situation?
In my situation, it was emotional, mental, sexual, economic. I was not allowed to grocery shop. I was a Head Start teacher at the time, and my check was direct deposited into, back then, my husband's account. And he would fill up the gas tank on Sunday night and give me $20 for the week. And that's all I saw of my paycheck. I wasn't allowed to grocery shop. I wasn't allowed to buy anything for my children. I was told that I was too stupid to handle any of the finances of our home. And I started to believe that. After a while, when you're beaten over your head that you're stupid, you're not good enough, you're not a good enough mother, you don't know better. After a while, you start believing that. When, this person isolated me from my family, I could not have friends or family over, and that's the first step. And he had me believe that my family was not for me, not on my side, that they were against him, but my family was against him because they saw the signs that I refused to see.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it was just a really, really difficult time because he isolated me from everyone. And then I left my job. He told me to leave my job. I left my job to be, a caretaker of my children. And then when I wanted to go to school, he said, no, we don't have money for that. We don't have money for you to go back to school to get further your education. Your job is to take care of the children. In my home, I just walked around eggshells. I was scared, scared, and always felt like I did nothing right by my children, by him, by our home, and I became that person that just doubted myself altogether. I was not that strong woman that I was when I first, I was raised by strong women. I was raised by a strong family, and all of a sudden, all those morals, values, everything that I was raised in went out the window because I was trying to please this one person.
Yeah. Yeah. How was there substance use or alcohol involved that contributed to the abuse?
Okay, so my ex family had substance abuse, and he was also an alcoholic and drug addict. When I first met him, he was active, and he told me, I'm active. I came out of AA. He had like 3 DWIs and everything, had gone to rehab and everything. That was when we first met, he was actively drinking and he was an alcoholic, and he told me that. Within 2 months time, he turned around and said, I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to go back to AA because I don't want to lose you and your daughter. I love you. So stand by me. But prior to that, there was a lot of toxic stuff that took place, and that brought us there. I wanted to leave. I wanted to scream and run the opposite way. And this was his way of luring me back in by telling me that he was going to get sober, that he loved me, that he loved my daughter. And so he did have, drug addiction, alcoholism, or what have you. And then he went to rehab. He was in AA, and I supported him throughout all of that. But he ended up becoming what's called a dry drunk, where he was no longer attending meetings, no longer getting the support that he needed. He just wasn't drinking, and he was just angry. And that anger was pushed upon me and my family and the children and the home, and I was made to feel like, well, I'm not drinking, so you're the problem.
That sounds very familiar. I know the dry drunk behavior, people people who are alcoholics and get sober anticipate that the sober spouse would be ecstatic to hear that they're sober, but the drinking really isn't the problem. It's not the drunkenness that's the problem. It's the behaviors and the inability to cope with certain things and the chaos that's created in the home. That is the problem. And I won't say too much here, but I have some experience with that, and I'm just wondering if you might have experienced a similar situation living with an alcoholic, and then a person who was a dry drunk, not really dealing with his issues, but not drinking. How much of your time did you spend anticipating the next problem?
Yes.
To maneuver like I have this, the best way that I can explain to people how I lived for many years was if you just imagine driving down a 6-lane, very busy highway, you are never just worried about your car. You're worried about the car to your right, the car to your left, the car in front of you, the cars behind you. Are they coming up too fast behind you? Is the car in front of you braking? Is there somebody swerving in and out of traffic? And like, just transplant that idea into a home. What's he doing? What's she doing? What did he just say? What did she say? How can I see this storm starting to come. How can I stop it? And was that your experience as well?
That was my experience every day. My experience, I was always waiting for the next shoe to drop. Mm-hmm. I was always high alert, always scared, always paranoid, always scared for my children. And my biggest, concern was my children. So I tried to focus on my kids and try to tiptoe around the person, him, and protect my children from his explosion, walking on eggshells constantly, you know. It's sad, but like I have 3 children. Um, 2 of them are his. My oldest daughter is not his. And I would text her on my way home from work. And I was like, how's dad doing? And she would text me back and she's like, Mom, he's not in good space. I'm in my room right now with the door closed, you know? So she would alert me if he was angry about the garbage not being taken out or whatever it was that day, and we lived on high alert, heightened state constantly, and I carry a lot of guilt because my daughter endured most of that. And I stayed because of my upbringing, traditional way of trying to make family work and stay because of the children, and I stayed quiet. And like I told you in the beginning of this interview, this is my first time even telling my story because I'm so private. As a domestic violence survivor, you're taught to almost keep it secret.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speak about, and it's a little uncomfortable to even say that I did experience that, but I know I did.
Yeah.
I've come through it. I know I'm a survivor of it.
What were some of the patterns of behaviors that you noticed once you realized, were there patterns of behaviors? Well, if A happens, then B is going to happen, or if A doesn't happen, then B is going to happen. Like, were there certain things that you're like, oh, this happened, so it's not going to be a good night? Did you have those sorts of things?
There were. One of the things that was like really interesting to me was holidays, birthdays, any type of celebration times. I knew that it wasn't going to be good for us, or vacations. For some reason, we would plan vacations and the day of, some chaos would happen. He would have some type of fit. He would be unhappy about the packing, whether the children didn't have the pajamas that they were supposed to have or socks they were supposed to have. Somehow, some way, I failed as a mother to pack everything that needed to be packed for this vacation. Holidays, same thing. Somehow, some way, that he would make everything horrible, and it was weird because it seemed like, and I used to joke about this with the only person that I ever shared what was going on with me was my best friend, my cousin. And I would say, like, every 3 months, it's almost like he has his menstrual. And we have this chaos in our home. So almost every 3 months, it would be where everything was complete chaos in our home. And I was walking on eggshells and the children were running to their rooms. And my daughter was putting music on in the room with her 2 little brothers so they wouldn't hear the violence that was going on in the living room between their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, so that would take place a lot.
Yeah. And that leads me to actually the next question that I had was, when it came to the kids, how did all of this affect them individually?
I tell protect the children as much as possible. My life became that. My life became the children. My joy became the kids. So I would do crafts. I would do Halloween parties, Christmas parties, and I got the love and attention that I needed from my children, because I knew that my marriage was, I knew I was in an abusive relationship. So I would just focus on the children. A lot of times when the violence occurred, my oldest daughter, who at the time was only 10, would take my little guy, Liam, who was like 5, and then I had the baby, Bri, who was only like maybe 1. She would take them into her bedroom, close the door, lock the door, and put TV on loud or put music on loud, and to protect them from the violence that was going on downstairs between their parents. And still to this day, I know that my oldest daughter is affected by that because we've spoken about it. Liam has some memory of that. The baby doesn't. We have a new life now. The baby, Brian, is now 8. And when I left his father, he was almost 2, And Liam does remember a lot. He's 13 now. He has had some anxiety, hoarding, food, depression. So I've, from the beginning, I've had all 3 children in therapy, from almost immediately. But out of my 3 children, my daughter, who is now 19 years old, she's the one that I feel most guilty about because she saw the most.
Yeah.
I've had to have some raw discussions with her, open discussions with her that are uncomfortable. But at the same token, it's like built her to be the strongest young lady that I know. She's stronger than me. But yes, she saw a lot, and it does affect the children. And even 6 years later, all 3 children are still in therapy.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. I had told you guys earlier before our interview that the abuse of a narcissist and person like my ex doesn't stop after you leave. After I left, it's been 6 years, and he relocated to my town, moved a block away from me. Prior to me moving to where I live, he grabbed my face like this and said, "Wherever you move with my children, I'm going to effing move right next to you," to intimidate me and say he's going to control my life. Years later, he did move to my town, a block away from my house, and for 6 years, I've been going to court where he's been filing petition after petition to try to get custody of my children. And that's a form of abuse. That's a form of intimidation. I'm constantly looking back over my shoulder. What is it going to follow next? What am I doing wrong? What am I not doing? What is he going to claim that I'm not doing by our children? Luckily, I trust the judicial system, and they have done right by me, and I do have custody of my children, and he has visitations with them, but it doesn't end because he's constantly putting petitions in to the court saying that I'm not doing right by our children.
Right.
So that's a different form of abuse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I just want to say right now, because I'm thinking about how people who are listening are interpreting what you're saying, because you're being very careful, and we asked you to share in ways that are comfortable with you, for obviously to make you comfortable. But I just want to say that I remember maybe it was 2 years ago, you sent me either a text message or a Facebook message, and you said, "You're friends with so-and-so." Honestly, I don't even remember the person's first name. And I was like, yeah, I just assumed it was a Walk Hill person because they were friends with all these Walk Hill people. And you told me, oh no, this was my ex-husband. And you had already shared very detailed things that to me were horrifying. And
Right.
you are being so cool, and that's good for you. You are being so level-headed in how you're sharing. But I'm saying this for a couple of reasons. I'm saying it because the information you gave me horrified me, what you told me. And I don't even know if you remember what you told me, but I was beside myself with what you had shared. And then when months later, after you sharing this, maybe it was two or 3 months later, you said, hey, I'm seeing that this person is friends with you, and that person is my ex. And then I went back through the conversations, and they were, when I don't really know somebody and I think I'm supposed to know them, I'll be friendly and nice. I'm like, I should know you because you went to Walk Hill, or and I don't even think this person went to Walk Hill. I just assumed they did because they were friends with all these Walk Hill people. And I was just being friendly. But when I went back and read, I was like, yeah, that was a weird comment, and that was phishing. And it just became clear to me once I realized who this person was, that there was a motive behind the things that were being said in those messages, to be very manipulative, to present himself in a very particular way to me, because I think he realized you and I were starting to become friends.
Right.
This was right after the reunion that we had, and whenever that was, 2019.
Right. And you're right. I am trying to tone it down to the extent, but my abuse was horrific. It was sexual abuse. It was physical abuse. It was verbal, psychological abuse, and economical abuse. He completely controlled my being. And that part of me tries to tone things down because that's the way I was raised,
Also how you lived for all those years.
Yeah, it's very scary you're trained to keep everything a secret.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're almost brainwashed to believe that this life is okay. This is what it's supposed to be,
Yeah. And
That's
so I think it's fair to say that not every element of your experience with domestic violence needs to be brought to the light, because why?
right. I survived.
Yeah.
I'm there for anyone going through it. My aspect of it was far more, there's domestic violence victims that go through the physical and far more than anything else. I endured some physical, but most of what I endured was sexual abuse and verbal, psychological control. I was a prisoner in my home. I wasn't even the shell of the woman that I was when I first met this person. And I was scared. I was so afraid. I learned that I had to believe that leaving this relationship, that outside of this relationship, there was hope that I could have a better life than what I was living. I didn't think I could because I was so convinced that this was the best that I could have.
Right.
And but I was able to break free. Easy. There were resources out there that I did tap into. And like I said, the divorce process was difficult, is still difficult. I'm remarried now and happily remarried, and I'm still going through the family court system with my ex, who is a narcissist, who's been diagnosed narcissist.
No, that's crazy. I think Jen might have some questions because I've been shooting them all out. I'm such a question hog.
I'm not gonna lie, Alicia, I was crying at one point, and I was, just my heart breaks for you and anyone else who has to go through this. And I'm sorry that you've had to endure all of that pain and you're still having to deal with this crap with this evil human being. I'm truly, truly sorry. It should never be. Case closed. It just should never, ever, ever be.
And I think the most difficult part for me is the damage to my children. Like my boys go to their father every other weekend and they visit them during the week or what have you. And seeing them come back and I have to reprogram them to liking this new life, our home, our family. It's heartbreaking, because their father has an agenda. He's angry. He's furious about this new life that we have. And it's very toxic. And my boys are broken. That's the most heartbreaking part as a mother, to have to keep rebuilding your children every week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Their visit. You know what I mean? And I'm a strong person and I kept everything a secret for a very long time because that's the way I was trained to be. And as a domestic, it's even uncomfortable it's weird, but it's even uncomfortable to say I'm a domestic violence survivor, but I am, I completely am.
Mm-hmm.
I lived on eggshells. I was scared for my children. I was scared for myself, but I had to live this facade for the world outside. I had to pretend that I had this white picket fence.
And what was your final straw? And did you ever have to call the police?
Yes. And that's the biggest thing with this whole domestic violence thing that I have.
Oh, wait, can I just ask you one more thing that's actually related? Because I have a friend whose sister-in-law was murdered by her boyfriend. And I was talking to her a little bit about it. And she said on average, it takes women like 7 tries to leave the home before they finally leave.
Yes, yes. I was with this person for 13 years. Okay. And I can tell you, Jennifer, that if I could give any advice to anyone that's out there living this life, you have to file petitions with the police. You have to file police reports. Because when I was divorced and I was getting divorced, the judge was saying, is there a police report for that incident? Was there a police report when he choked you? Was there a police report when he kicked you, punched you? Was there a police report when he did X, Y, and Z? I didn't have it. As a private person, as a person that who I was, you know, I didn't call the police because this person worked for the school district. I didn't want him to lose his job. So therefore, no, I didn't call the police every time he did X, Y, and Z. I didn't, I was trying to make it work. But when we were divorced and I had to go to court, all of that bit me in the butt because it was like it didn't happen. All the abuse did not happen if it wasn't documented. If I didn't go to the police, if I didn't file a police report, it didn't happen. It's like it didn't exist.
What was your final straw?
Yeah. Well, the final straw was with, thank God, he fell in love with somebody else and he cheated with someone else, which is fine. And he was coming in and out of the house and said, you have to accept this. I love her. I'm going to live in our son's room and you have to accept it. And he thought that I would just accept it, that he had a girlfriend and that he was going to sleep in his son's room and we were going to have this home and we were going to still remain married. And to the community, we would look like Mr. and Mrs. whoever and their family and going to have this mistress, I said, no. I said, I was choked, put into the corner and told, you're going to accept this. And I said, I'm not going to accept this. I said, wherever I go, my children are going to go with me. You can have the house, you can have everything, I don't care, but my children are going to go with me. And that's when he had said to me, and he had grabbed my throat and my face and said, wherever you freaking move with my children, I'm moving right next door to you. As to tell me that he was going to still control me, So I just ran to family court and filed a petition for full custody of my children. And then I got an attorney and moved forward with my divorce process. And I got divorced. I left the home. I didn't want it. There's so many bad memories there. I left it. And then I moved to Kingston and started my new life. And, needless to say, the person that he was cheating with left him after probably 3 or 4 months, and then his fixation, he became fixated on trying to get control of me, but it was too late.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Mhm.
As you were telling me all of this, I'm thinking of two things. One, what can we do? Like, what advice could you give women if we see somebody?
Right.
Because it's my understanding, I just heard actually a therapist say out of all marriages, roughly 25%, there's some kind of abuse going on in the home. So chances are we probably do know, like we all know somebody who's in, an abusive marriage. What signs can we look for? Or if we have like a hunch, what can we do? And then if she is like, how can she get out of, like you said, you got a lawyer and all that. What if she doesn't have money? Like, what if she's staying there because she's scared, because she's like, I need, like $8,000 for a lawyer. Like, he's making all the money. What about health insurance? What about X, Y, and Z, PDQ?
And I was in that position, Jen. He was a primary financial person. I had no money. He controlled all of my money. Like I said earlier, my check was deposited to his account. So I felt stuck. Like I felt like I have to stay here. How am I going to get out? He controls everything. He used to do grocery shopping, paid every bill in the house with his check and my check. I had access to no money. I didn't have my own bank account. I didn't have my own debit card. I did nothing. I had control of nothing. So I was scared.
You're muted, Jen.
Oh, so
sorry. So how did you do that? And how did you get a lawyer and all of that?
So honestly, I reached out to Ulster County, like Woodstock, which was like domestic advocates, and I got a social worker, and then through a friend, really, I learned of my attorney, and I spoke to him, and he said, you only need to give me down an attorney fee, but other than that, all the proceedings I'm going to be able to get from him, because he made good salary, he made good money. But I did have to put down $2,000, and it was a girlfriend of mine from Tennessee, a high school friend from Walkill, and I'll say it because I love her to death, Yvonne Rivera. She gave me $2,000 to retain this attorney, and she said, Alicia, do not pay me back, just get divorced, so just move forward. So I got the retainer fee. And then after that, the social worker from Woodstock assisted me with this attorney, and I was able to move forward. I got restraining orders where the person, he couldn't get close to me. I didn't have to speak to him, and he was out of the house, and he had no control anymore.
So we have about, if I'm seeing it correctly, about 6 minutes left. And before we end, I'm hoping that you can answer. Jen kind of asked it. I'm not sure that I heard the answer. Maybe I was hoping for, but so you've already told us how you got out, but what can friends do, friends and family who see people in this situation? What are practical things they can do to be helpful without escalating the situation in the home? Because sometimes people aren't ready. And then when you're done answering that, I really want you to just spend time to tell us where you are now.
Okay, perfect. You're right. It's very difficult as a friend, because I had mutual friends that would reach out to me and say, you're not happy, you're not okay, what's going on? And because when you're stuck in a domestic violence situation where you're scared to death and you're walking on eggshells, you're scared to tell anybody else. You're scared to pull in anyone else into your situation, because that person your partner may retaliate towards your loved ones or your friends, you know. I had friends that would just support me and talk to me daily. And it took for me to get to rock bottom by myself, but to have the support of my on the side where they were talking to me to get out of the situation. You know, it's like, don't ever underestimate your advice, your support, your love to a person that is in a domestic violence situation.
Yeah.
Because they hear it, they keep it in the back of their mind, and when they get the courage enough to walk away, they'll hold on to that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I remember this was probably like 15 years ago. Somebody came to me about constant physical abuse that was extremely dangerous, and they came to seek refuge. One of my family's houses, and they lived a number of hours away. And I remember the next day really just feeling a pressure to want to help this person because I love them so much. And going to the battered women's shelter to talk to somebody, and that person gave me really good advice that I don't know that I would have come up with on my own. And what she said was, you can only help as much as they're willing to let you help, because they know their situation and they know what kind of help could cause more harm for them. And when they're ready, the time will be right and they'll get out. And sometimes it's hard for us as bystanders and witnesses to just let things go. But sometimes that's the best way, because the person living in it knows when's the safe time for them to leave. And I also want to mention the fact that you've used the word walking on eggshells, the phrase walking on eggshells multiple times. There's another phrase you used too. I think you said a prisoner in my own home. Just even paying attention to those sorts of phrases. If you hear somebody saying, oh, I feel like I'm always walking on eggshells, cue into that, because people who are constantly feeling that way, chances are there's some underlying something going on. I don't want to automatically say a physical or sexual, but definitely probably emotional abuse if they're constantly feeling like they're walking on eggshells or have to tiptoe around somebody. So be aware of the phrases that you've heard in this conversation with Alicia, because chances are those people might be dropping those things to you, and really they're giving you here when it goes so much deeper. And so those are things to look at. So, but the time we have remaining, let's hear the good stuff, which is where you are now, because that, as I was telling you guys beforehand, before we started recording, for Holocaust victims, they always say their greatest revenge is grandchildren, and grandchildren means a life well lived. So we want to hear your greatest revenge, which is where your life is now.
Yes, I have. My testimony is I have always leaned on God, and that is my strength. And having faith in God has brought me to where I am today. I have always believed that if with prayer, that God had a better life for me today. Mm-hmm. And he did. 4 years later, I'm married to a wonderful man, Joe McDonald, and we have a beautiful family of 7 children. And my daughter, Analia, who I spoke about earlier, that I carry a lot of guilt, she's the strongest young lady that I could ever imagine to be. She's beautiful. She's studying criminal justice, and she right now, as we speak, she's in Missouri, and she joined the Army as a National Guard. Mm-hmm. So in basic training, and she's doing military police. That's what she wants to be. And she's a strong young lady. And although she endured a lot when she was little, we have a clear communication, strong communication. And I know that, everything that she went through has made her a stronger woman, young lady, and she will never allow anyone to violate her, abuse her in any shape or form. But yeah, we are happy. We have, I live in Kingston. We are a happy family, blended family of 7 children. So yes, and I know that I'm glowing now because my life is so different. I am rebuilding my the person that I used to be. I see myself rebuilding myself now, and my career and everything that I do in life. So it's great.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. I'm so happy to hear that. And I see your Instagram photos with you and your new husband and the Facebook photos. And sometimes I'm gonna be honest, I'm like, oh, there's Alicia just being all happy again. It's like, but I look at it and it warms my heart to see, knowing your past, that you have somebody that you have an emotionally, physically safe space with. And it sounds like a spiritually safe space with too, which, what more can you ask for? So we're thankful for Joe in your life, and I'm sure he's grateful to have you in it. And I don't know, Jen, if you had any follow-up questions. I'm just trying to get finished up before we get bumped off the recording.
No, I just can't thank Alicia enough for taking the time to do this with us and share her experiences and the difficulties and the victory at the end. It's just awesome to hear that you're so happy.
Yeah. Very happy to hear this happy ending, and especially the turnaround, the strength, the resilience that your daughter showed through all of that.
Absolutely.
As a stronger person because of it, and to know not what to get into as an adult, as she faces adulthood. And hopefully your boys will learn more from Joe than they will from their dad on what it means to be a man and a husband and a father. And
my boys, especially Liam, who's 13 years old, he's the most compassionate kid, and he loves love. And he looks at my relationship and he turns around and he tells me, Mom, Joe loves you. It's sweet to see him, acknowledge what a relationship is supposed to be like. So, I'm hopeful that with our morals, values, and faith in God, and I instill God in our children, that, we'll come through this and we'll be good. Yeah.
And we'll get to see it. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And thanks to those who listened in. We realize this was a heavier topic, but these are important topics that people don't want to talk about. And that's why we want to talk about them, because it's helping someone out there who's in a similar situation. And so thank you so much for your bravery and sharing your experiences with us. And we're just so happy that you're where you're at now. And
thank you.
With that, we'll see you all next time here on The Messy Truth. We'll take care, everybody.
Bye.